Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Hello everyone. Welcome to my NPTEL course on interior design. And today we are going to talk about green interiors, and I would essentially discuss the rating systems with an overview and introduction to them and giving some examples. It's a very important discussion because we often talk about green buildings and what is their impact on the environment. And often we do not talk about the interior spaces because that's the most where we inhabit throughout the day and most of the time period of the year or different seasons, and they have a lot of impact on the environment. So how do we design, interior spaces in a very energy efficient manner and that we cause less harm to the environment is what the focus of today's discussion. So basically, as you see, we are focusing green interiors and we are highlighting rating systems, and we will be discussing that throughout this session. So the broad contents would be green building rating systems. So what is a green building rating system primarily? And then what are the green building certifying organizations in India? What are the criteria for rating, and some references that will help you for further exploration about this subject. So when we talk about a green building rating system, basically it is, like thumb rules or a set of guidelines, and it is sort of emergence of, longitudinal research over a long period of time, and where, after certain experiments, validation, verification, and, evaluation from the market and on-ground application, based on all of that, certain guidelines are formulated. And they are designed to, understand the performance of buildings and assessing their environmental performance overall. How do they, affect the environment? And they are usually market-driven tools, and they influence building practices to a great deal. And, it's sort of an important discourse that are these rating systems always useful? Should we always apply them? What happens to our fundamental senses of design? If we know the fundamentals of design, do we have to rely on these rating systems? So there is always, people talking in favor of this, and then people who would say that we do not need a sort of a rating system, but if we design, with fundamentals of design in place and with passive design practices, it is easy to achieve good energy performance and not harming the environment. So this is my personal take that, these are sort of set guidelines, and they could be used as references, and it's good to refer to them because, like I said, they have been formulated after a lot of research and then trying to assess the applications over a long period of time. So it always helps in understanding how would we calculate the environmental performance of our interior spaces and overall buildings. And it is actually based on certain criteria, which is also, set after a lot of discussion and research. And those parameters that we are going to see, they do affect the performance of a building, and it's important to keep them in consideration while designing the buildings, spaces within the interior of the building or the exterior envelope, and cohesively the entire interior architecture. So what you see on the screen are some rating systems that are used all over the world, and it's a huge range, and different parts of the world and different countries have adopted different rating systems. And there is this huge plethora, which is like, there is CASB, there is Green Mark, there is Green Star, there is LEED. So there are a lot of these rating systems which have been adopted based on which country, employs them, and how it works for their environment and their climatic conditions, and how have they been adopting those and utilizing them for evaluating the performances of the building. So if I talk about the certifying organizations in India, we also largely have like these three organizations. There is USGBC, there is IGBC, and there is TERI. And they have been instrumental, and they have been like very active in designing and formulating these certifying procedures and these guidelines, and which have helped lots of architects, institutes, and different individuals to design very, very energy efficient and environment responsive buildings. So, here what we see are the rating systems that are adopted in India. And if you could see, what is highlighted is LEED CI. And this is what is the emphasis of today's discussion primarily. So, we talk about these so many rating systems, but LEED CI is primarily focused on commercial interiors. So, it is a very, very distinct and very specialized rating system that focuses on interior spaces. And like I discussed in the very beginning, it is very important to focus on the interior spaces. And there is a lot of impact that, the design of an interior space would have on an individual's mental well-being, on the environment, because we really inhabit them most of the year and for the longest time possible. So if we see the USGBC, there are rating systems like LEED NC, LEED CS, and others. And within that, there is this LEED CI, which is a very important tool for interior designers and interior architects. And within the umbrella of IGBC, we see LEED India NC, LEED India CS. There is also green homes. There are special economic zones, SEZs, on which these regulations are, distinctly employed, and they are designed for that purpose. There is also a green landscape, green factory. And then we have TERI, which has our very indigenous rating system, Griha. Because there was always, this kind of a discussion that why do we always have to follow on international standards and rating systems? Because India is a very different context. We are a very, very diverse nation. We have geographical diversity. We have our own climate zones. And also our thermal comforts, our ergonomics, the dimensions, all of that, compared to a European nation, the people living there and other parts of the world would be slightly different. So this was an attempt by TERI to come up with this very indigenous rating system known as Griha. And it's very fascinating. But our focus is CI today, and we are talking about this commercial interiors and how this rating is done. So if I just give you an overview about the LEED CI, basically, as we talked, it is formulated by USGBC, and currently what we are following is the LEED version 4.1, and otherwise there were some versions which were used in the past also. So there is always this kind of a longitudinal application, and then if there is some revision, some modification, some incorporation of different guidelines which comes over a period of time after looking at these applications, assessing them, and getting feedback from the market and designers, there is always this sort of a addition, revision that keeps on happening. So these are certain versions which are easily available, and interior designers and firms, the offices who practice interior design projects, they have this option to register for the version 4.1, which is quite effective and comprehensive. So when we talk about the rating system, there are certain areas which are essentially addressed, like site planning, water use. There is energy use, materials use, and indoor environmental quality, which we also say as IEQ. So these are very, very important factors, and like I said few slides back, these are also the areas or parameters or factors that would essentially play a role if one would follow the fundamentals of design principles. We know how important is to plan a site, optimize its planning and use, and how water is used on the site, and what is the energy usage or energy consumption, what kinds of services and systems are employed during design of a building or the interior spaces. And since we are talking about commercial interiors and interior spaces primarily, materials play a very, very important role because we talk about sustainability, we talk about this energy efficiency, we talk about the environmental impact assessment, and we do understand as architects and interior designers that what a profound role materials play in that. So the selection of materials and what kind of procurement methods, from what, how much kilometers are you procuring them, what is your sustainability radius. So to get the materials, all of that is very, very important, and it does impact the rating of a design build procedure and the interior design project. And of course the IEQ, because it's very important to have a good environmental quality while inhabiting a space, because it does have a lot of impact on physical and mental well-being, and it does form a very important criteria while rating a building and coming up with a certain system of points which a building would get after getting the checklist of all these parameters. So here I would just like to emphasize that the focus of the rating is on design parameters and not on how the facility is operated. So this is very important. We were talking about certain parameters on the previous slide, and how the design parameters have been applied or employed while designing this building. But how it is operated and what are the different maintenance procedures, etc., that's not a part of the rating per se, but nonetheless it's important how the facility is operated and what is the post occupancy evaluation. All that is of course important, but for the calculation, yes, we primarily focus on the design parameters. So here we see all these important criteria that we were talking about. So site planning, very, very important. 21 points are assigned, for the substantial efforts that go in the planning of the site. What is the orientation? How do you get the daylight and, maximize daylighting? Then water use has 11 points. So water efficiency is that important parameter. And then energy use, so basically energy and atmosphere, it has very, very high 37 points. And there is material use, and since we are talking about interiors, all the more important. So materials and resources, 17 points. Then IEQ is 14 points. Innovation in design is very important, and looking at the contemporary trend and practices where we are doing innovation and we are trying to adopt new technology, new methods, and we are trying to cater to this overall concern of climate change and sustainability. Innovation in design is very, very important, and it does have 6 points. And yeah, I'm very happy to point out the point number 7, which is listed here, which is the regional priority, and it has 4 points. So basically anything related to a particular region, regional context, some natural resources or locally available resources, some kind of an identity that would impart this interior architecture or interior design project some kind of a critical regionalism or identity. All of those things, some very special and unique material palette which you would probably get in that particular region and not anywhere else. All of these points are also considered under LEED CI, and these are very, very important. So this is more or less like a total of 110 points that we are talking about, and the rating depends on your project and how many points could be, after careful assessment, they could be assigned to your project. So basically, yes, that is the level of rating based on a certain point that a building or a project has. So it's certified with 40 to 49 points, and then 50 to 59 would give it a designation of silver rated, and from 60 to 79 it would have the distinction of gold rated, and then above that up till 110 points it's like platinum rated, which is sort of the highest rating level in terms of the performance of a project, and how high it is on the tally of achieving those points, which make it very, very energy efficient and more responsible and less harmful towards the environment. Yes, so it's also important to understand what is the scope of work for interior fit out. So when one works on interior design projects, there are a lot of different uh, areas where a designer could contribute, and these cohesively create a very interesting and very, very important project which creates an impression and identity for itself and also performs well. So here if you look at on the screen, basically here we see this daylight, and daylight is a very, very important factor. So how much could you maximize the daylight and minimize the artificial lighting? So this comes within the scope of interior fit out, and the interior designers and interior architects, it comes from their design sensibilities and understanding of the site, and also there are constraints and challenges at time. There may be shared walls, there may be less possibilities of letting the daylight enter in your building or spaces, but then you have to navigate on the site and see what best could be done. And then other than daylighting, how carefully are you designing the lighting, the light fixtures, and they should be designed in a manner that you get just the right amount of illuminance, and it's good enough to do your work, read, or sometimes if the reading is not required, maybe the lux levels have to be reduced, or if you have designed like occupancy sensors where the light would dim itself when the occupant is not there. So we would discuss few of these concepts. So lighting is a very important part of this entire scope of work within interior fit out. Then finishes are very, very important, and so essentially when we talk about finishes, so within the finishes, what are sort of paints and textures and laminates, and how it would impact your overall interior space, whether they are light reflecting, light absorbing, and so on. And yes, furniture plays a very, very important role because we are talking about interiors, and furniture design is an extremely crucial and important part of designing interior spaces. And then again, what kind of furniture is designed, what are the material choices for that, etc. And yes, the space making elements like partition, they are also very important. And then of course services, plumbing, fire safety, other kinds of systems that are employed, and also building elements like flooring. So all of these are important, and while designing each of these and then catering to this entire scope, one has to very cautiously and responsibly choose the raw material resources and design very, very effectively to minimize the impact on the environment and create more responsive spaces, and which are more eligible to be qualified as green interior spaces. And then what environmental impact do these have? That's also important that we understand that while we were also talking about the scope of the project, it's important to also individually understand the environmental impact they would have. So like if we talk about this daylight over here, of course there is a direct correlation with site planning, as I was explaining, what kind of site you have, where is it oriented, are you getting the enough daylight or not. And then daylight has this direct connection or implication with the energy use or energy consumption within your interior space, because if you do not have enough daylight, Of course, you will have to rely much more on the mechanical systems, and it would increase the energy consumption overall. And of course, daylight has a very, very profound impact on the IEQ that we have been talking about. If we look at the partitions, there is this connection with the materials that are used to design this partition. What kind of materials have been used? And there are also finishes. Finishes also impact the IEQ. And what are the kinds of finishes that you have chosen? Are they more towards the natural palettes, or they have lots of organic compounds within them? Do they have lots of chemicals? So how do we minimize that? Because we inhale all of them when we are inhabiting interior spaces. So it's important what kinds of finishes also we choose, not just the overall material, like brick or concrete or glass. So they have a lot of implication on your interior, spaces, their response towards environment, and how would you achieve a rating system, but also the finishes. And yes, furniture, if we talk about, again, material, there is a lot of direct implication. What are the kinds of materials chosen for designing those furniture pieces? So basically, when we talk about green buildings, Wiggins says that green building is not about a building, it is about people. And this is a very, very important thing to understand. That yes, you are evaluating a performance of a building or an interior space, and one is trying to assess the performance by giving, certain points, which is based on certain parameters or criteria, which is very carefully, cautiously chosen and developed over a long period of time. But it's essentially about the people, because it's people who are inhabiting that building or those interior spaces. And it's largely to do with their physical and mental well-being, as I was pointing out all the time. So it's very important to understand that it's not just a set of technical guidelines or rules. It's about health, it's about people who live over there, it's about their experiences, it's about all of those emotions, they go through while designing, being associated to the project or living inside it. So it's very important to see these rating systems from that perspective and through that lens of human-centered design. So I hope this introduction gives you this overall understanding of the rating systems and why primarily they are so important for interiors and why we have this distinct lead commercial interiors as a rating system. And next time we are going to talk about green interiors in terms of different attributes like IAQ, IEQ, furniture, a little bit in detail than what we discussed today. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. And there are certain references that could really help you explore more on your own and go into the detail. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.